Extinction is an ABA technique that can be very useful and powerful, but it must be applied carefully, and there are certain considerations that need to be taken into account prior to developing a plan to use extinction. The first consideration is, what is the primary function of the behavior? In order for extinction to be effective, the primary function must be attention. Second, you need to consider, is this a safe behavior to intervene with extinction? Some behaviors may not be safe, and if it would be unsafe to allow that behavior to escalate, then it is not a good behavior to use extinction with. Finally, you have to be ready for that extinction burst. Almost every time extinction's applied, there will be this burst where we see the behavior increase for a certain amount of time before it begins to decrease. And you need to know both that that's going to happen and to be ready and that you're going to see it through. Extinction is basically the purposeful ignoring of a behavior that is being maintained by attention that can be controlled. If it's the attention coming from peers, you might not be able to control that. For instance, let's say that there's a kid who is making fart noises in the classroom and his classmates are laughing and he's doing it to get their attention. You ignoring that behavior is not going to take away the reinforcement because he's being reinforced by the attention of his peers. Therefore, extinction would not be an appropriate method to reduce that behavior. Also, you have to look at all the environments in which this occurs. Make sure that you can talk to everybody. Do they go to a daycare? Do they stay with an aunt? Are you able to involve everybody that is working with this individual, with this child, and ensuring that they're able to also safely apply extinction? Also remember, you have to be simultaneously teaching a replacement behavior. Behavior communicates. They are getting a need met by engaging in this behavior. And it is unethical to tell someone that they can't meet their needs. So you have to be teaching that replacement behavior. Another way that they can get your attention or whomever's attention they're looking for in a socially acceptable way. And that replacement behavior needs to be a fair pair. What fair pair means is that for the same amount of effort, they can get the same amount of attention. And that attention needs to be both quantity and quality. So I will go back to a client I had years ago who was engaging in um, stealing their mother's phone and throwing the phone at the window, at the TV, in ways that could not be ignored. And so she was very quick. She grabbed the phone, she would run with it, and the mother would jump up and yell. And it was a whole big show that this little girl loved. She would jump up and down, grinning ear from ear. And so for the mom to have a replacement behavior for that, she couldn't just say, "Oh, good job, thank you." That wasn't going to be nearly enough. She gave so much energy to this behavior she didn't want to see. She really had to bump up and make sure she was screaming and yelling and jumping up and down for the giving the attention when she did want it. So when she was playing a game with her and looking to give her that same amount, that can be a really hard thing to remember, is that look at the amount of reaction they're getting for this target behavior for reduction. You've got to give that same amount of energy for the replacement behavior, or it's not going to be effective. Really consider, is this a safe behavior for me to purposefully ignore? Okay, so behaviors such as self-injurious behavior, also sometimes referred to as SIB, is probably not a behavior you want to ignore. These kiddos, they can escalate it to a point that we can't ignore it. They can push it further. They can go from gently bumping their head against the wall to hitting it so hard they're going through the drywall, that they're splitting their forehead open, and then you cannot ignore it. If you can't ignore it when it escalates to a high level, don't put that behavior on extinction, because they will push it so far that you have to attend to it. And when that happens, then you've reinforced even a higher level of that dangerous behavior. The good news is that research has shown you can still reduce that target behavior for reduction by teaching the replacement behavior. You diminish the response you're giving to that target behavior and increase the response you're doing for the replacement behavior. So let's say that they are banging their head on the wall and they're doing that to get your attention, and you're teaching them to come place their hand on your shoulder, right? You can't ignore them when they go to bang their head on the wall. As soon as you see them going to do that, intervene quickly, but do it quietly. Don't give a verbal response. Keep them safe, move them away, distract them with something else. After you've given a bit of a space between that, then prompt them to touch you on the arm. And when they engage in the behavior you want to see from them, that's when you give the behavior. Hey, Mary, how are you? So good to see you. Look at your smile. Do you want to play? So you can still effectively reduce a behavior that's being maintained by attention without employing extinction. Do not employ extinction if that behavior could be a dangerous one, if they could hurt themselves or if they could hurt somebody else, because they can push that to a level that you cannot ignore, which will result in you reinforcing a higher level of that behavior and making the problem even worse. When considering how to apply extinction, an example that I often use is thinking about a water fountain. Okay, so let's say that we've got a water fountain, and the young man who gets a drink of water from this water fountain always uses this side button. They go and push this side button all the time to get water. Now, let's say that this button no longer works. So they're going to come back and they're going to push that button and it doesn't work. Well, they're going to push it again harder, right? Just like we all would. I've always gotten water from this water fountain. By golly, this water fountain's going to give me water, and so I'm going to really hit that booger hard. Well, they may not even understand that there's another button right here in the front. That's the replacement behavior. In this case, this is a fair pair. Pushing that front button is going to give them the same amount of water and pushing that side button. So if that side button stops working, we can show them how to use this front button, but they might still use that side button. Okay, this is that extinction burst. They're hitting that side button even though we're showing them that front button works. They keep hitting it. We need to keep showing them that that front button works and reinforcing them. In this case, they get reinforced by getting water. That water is representing attention in this case. Now, in a dangerous behavior, we don't employ extinction, right? We still allow them to get a little bit of water by hitting that side button. We just want to make sure that we're giving them less water on that side button and they get a lot of water in that front button. So think about that, because if we try to use extinction on that side button and they keep banging it and banging it and banging it, and when they hit that button really hard, they finally get some water, that would be like them smashing their head into the wall until it splits open and you have to take them to the hospital, you have to attend to them. Then when they want attention again, they're going to know, if I hit it hard enough, I'm going to get attention. Just like a half broken water fountain. You know, hey, I've got to hit this thing 5 times really hard, but I'm going to finally get water. If you plan on using extinction, make sure that you can. Make sure you can do it safely. And don't back down. See it through. Be ready for that extinction burst, and always point to that replacement behavior, which is pushing the other button, the fair pair. As always, watch the data. Watch the data. Watch the data. This graph here would be like an example of a perfect extinction procedure, just know that it rarely looks this clean. As you can see in this data, they've got a baseline that is fairly high, but as soon as they start extinction, it jumps up. And they've got 3 days of an extinction burst. One of those days, the behavior's occurring maybe, close to twice as much as it did before. But after that, you see a steep decline. And within, 2 weeks, you're not seeing that behavior occur at all anymore. It would be great if we knew that was going to work every time. That may not be the case. It may be the case that that extinction burst could last for 2 weeks before you're able to effectively teach that replacement behavior and they recognize that this is no longer going to work and you see that drop and the replacement behavior takes over. Some things that can impact that is if this is a behavior you have tried to ignore before, so they've learned that they have to get past your ignoring it, they've got to push through it, that's going to make that extinction burst last longer. This is why it's really important that you consider, am I going to be able to go through this, hold steady, and not give any attention to this, okay? So in the perfect world, we would see this really great graph where we see a very short extinction burst and then a very sharp decline and the behavior goes away. We'd love to see it. Um, we have to be ready for the fact that it may not be that clean, but we also have to be ready to understand we could be wrong. So if we're looking at this data and 3 or 4 weeks down the line, we're still seeing a high level of this behavior, maybe we're wrong. Maybe it wasn't maintained by attention. Maybe this is a self-reinforcing sensory behavior and we need to adjust our intervention. That's why in ABA we always watch the data and we're always ready to adjust if needed. So in conclusion, remember that extinction can be a very effective means of reducing a behavior, but you have to be able to control that attention. It has to be a behavior that is safe to ignore. You have to be teaching that fair pair replacement behavior. Be ready for that extinction burst and watch the data. If you have any questions, do let me know.